Welcome to The Deepest Cut, a podcast about the movement from painful experiences to meaningful music. I'm your host, Matt Connor. Mac Powell warned me well ahead of time that he was fully prepared to cry. Now, that's not uncommon for us to talk about emotional subjects here on The Deepest Cut. After all, as you probably know, our subject matter walks us through the formative processes behind songs that the artist or band has labeled as the most painful or difficult songs they've ever released. Such emotions, then, are par for the course. But for Powell, the song he's ready to discuss is really the outlier in his entire catalog, whether as the longtime frontman for the globally known rock band Third Day, or the last several years as a solo artist. And that's because Powell says he normally doesn't turn to songwriting to be his therapy. For all of the songs in Powell's incredible catalog, which include 10 million albums sold, 4 Grammy Awards, and over 30 #1 radio singles. Yep. And for all of the nights that Powell was taking center stage himself, it's amazing how he managed to stay out of the spotlight of his own handiwork. The song It's a Shame, however, was different. And on this episode of The Deepest Cut, Powell says he's finally prepared to discuss the song publicly for the first time. The track itself is an empathetic exercise for Powell to find perspective and healing within his own alcoholic family system. And as connective as the song can be, it's actually surprising that Powell hasn't tried to mine the terrain for more of what he might have to say from such tender spaces. Now, I certainly appreciate Powell's openness and honesty here, especially on a subject he so rarely explores. His candor and careful approach, one literally full of care, make this a conversation that's likely to remain with the listener long after it's over. It did with me. So we hope that you enjoy this exploration of the song It's a Shame with its songwriter, the one and only Mac Powell. One quick note before we start. We can't include the song itself in this episode, but you'll find it linked in our show notes. We hope this conversation shapes the way you hear it. Hello and welcome to The Deepest Cut. My name is Matt Connor and I'm your host. I'm sitting here. I'm not in the children's room with him, but I'm so honored to be here with Mac Powell, former frontman, co-founder of Third Day, now a solo artist. I'll give you a chance to say hello. How are you today, Mac?
Man, I'm good. For all your listeners, I'm sitting in one of the nurseries at a church that I'm playing tonight. It's that rock and roll lifestyle that everybody dreams about. Sit in the little chairs. Yeah, there's a little slide in the corner. I'm about to do that and play some Legos. It'll be fun.
That's all part of the green room demands, a slide. Hey, well, Max, we'll appreciate you coming on the show, talking about obviously a specific song. We'll be talking about It's a Shame with this, but few artists have this sort of longevity that you have in this. And I was just looking back even over. I mean, it's been several years since even Third Day had their final run.
Yeah, we had a farewell tour in 2018. Yeah, as we're recording this, it's 6 years now.
I mean, it's crazy to think you're closer to a decade than not, even as a solo artist, or at least away from that. And that was a 30-year run itself.
Yeah, not quite 30 years, but close to it, around 25 plus years of being a Third Day. Yeah.
As we're in here talking about the idea of painful songwriting, this whole thing is around difficult songs to write. I guess I wonder for you, how much is songwriting, like for you personally, a tool for working through these kind of experiences? Have there been songs that you've left off of? Are there songs that just for you? Like, is this an exercise that's cathartic?
Definitely. I mean, for me, for the most part, I'm not a guy who writes for myself. Usually, if I say I write for myself, it's because I have to write. There's this creative thing that it's like you have to let this thing out of your mind and your heart, your spirit, and not to let go of it, but just to share it, but for the most part, I don't really write songs for me. except for to get that creative thing going. Usually I'm writing songs for other people. I've noticed that about myself in the past few years, and I don't know why that's the case. But every once in a while, there is a song where something's happening in life where there's something that you just have to express that through your art, your songwriting, your craft. And this was definitely the song we're about to talk about. It's a Shame is definitely one of those cases.
What's the normal way you work through those things? If it's not normally like songwriting.
As far as for me emotionally, and
Yeah.
I think probably talking about it, really conversations with my wife or other close mentors or friends. That's usually I'm more conversationalist that way. But you know, being a songwriter for the majority of my life, it's definitely a way for me to share my heart and to maybe let go of some things that are pinned inside that I need to let go of. But for the most part, when I'm writing, I try to write from an encouraging standpoint, not necessarily from an emotional, I got to get rid of this thing, but more from a, hey, I want to build somebody up and encourage them and have someone be able to, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, be able to tap their toes and clap their hands and sing along.
Are you surprised then when those songs come through in a songwriting moment?
Yeah, definitely surprised and really, wish that I did that more. I mean, it's amazing that, as I told you, I mean, I'm 51, I'll be 52 at the end of this year. And for the most part, my creative songwriting process is not for me. Like I said a moment ago, if it is for me, it's more of needing to do something about, you know, this craft and this love for music, but it's not necessarily an emotional, cathartic kind of letting go of something. So when I do write songs like that, I often say I should do this more often.
Is that a permission thing? Like, let me ask that. Is that a permission thing? Do you maybe feel
Hmm.
a lack of permission to put those kind of songs out there?
That's a great question. I don't think so. I think it's more of, what is it from the very beginning? What is it I want to do? And for me, I would often get in fights with the guys, not fights with guys in the band with Third Day, but more of like discussions. For me, there's a difference when we would come off the stage. Most of the other guys, it's interesting when you would think about the show and how people's perspective of it was. And a lot of times the other guys would be like, man, that was a great show. I played all the notes right. And, my cue was working and sounded great and all this stuff. And this is not a slam against them. But for me, the show is not really doesn't have a lot to do with how I did. The show really is like, how did the audience respond? For me, I'm doing a concert and I'm making records and I'm writing, not for me, it's for other people. So in regards to your question about do I need permission, it's not so much that, it's more of why am I doing this in the first place? And I'm probably one of the least artistic artists that you would ever meet because it's not one of those emotional things for me in the sense that I've got to do this. It's more like I want to do it for other people.
Have you ever had that impulse to, hey, I'm gonna write an album, and maybe for the first time, it's gonna be for me in that way?
No, I mean, not really.
And that will that ever happen?
Well, let me say this. There's been a time, like when we did the very last Third Day album, there was a sense of, hey, we're going to do what we want to do. We've already got the money from the record company. We know this is our last record, so we can do whatever we want to do. And so I did write that record with a very much a day. We're going to do musically. We're going to do what we want to do. But it wasn't necessarily an emotional. I was still writing for other people. I was still trying to write songs that people want to sing along to. It wasn't, a psychological, help for myself. I mean, in some regards, it always is, but I don't know. I've just always been, for me, it's more important. What I do is more important for me to do that for other people than myself.
That's so interesting to hear all of this because then that makes It's a Shame such an outlier in a way in the catalog.
When I got the email from my manager or the text about what this podcast was about, this was the song, like this is right away. My mind when they said, what is a song that was, the hardest song that you've ever written? I forget exactly how it was worded, but I knew right away this is the song. And not only because, this is the rare outlier, as you say, kind of song that I write it for myself, but also because of the timing of this whole thing. The song is about my father, and he passed away about a year ago, a little over a year ago now. And so still dealing with the emotions of losing him and just everything that comes with that, but also having written this song that's about him and about, his struggles and our struggles as a family. And so, yeah, it's tough. I don't do this a lot. It's very emotional for me. I'm a crier. I told you before we got on here and recorded, I'm a crier. So I tell people that all the time. I cry at commercials all the time. And, it could be an insurance commercial. And I'm like, oh, it's so good.
That emu with the
Yeah,
sunglasses on.
exactly. So, it's really the timing of this, thinking about that song, which I don't even know how many years ago that song was recorded. It was on the Wire album.
So 2004. Does that sound right?
That sounds right, I guess. Yeah. So it's been, goodness, 20 years now. That's crazy to think about. 20 years since that song and that album were released. And here I am still tearing up thinking about it.
Can you take us in? I mean, at least in some ways, I can resonate with what you're saying. My father passed 6 months ago, 5 months ago or so. It's a lot of reckoning. I mean, it's more reckoning with some, there's a lot of brokenness there. So it brings up almost as many questions as answers. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
can you take me inside? Like, it's a shame. And even what was the prompt? If you say this is rare for me, I don't go there, I don't write this way, I don't what, then where does that prompt even come from?
Yeah, it's interesting because, well, I'll start by saying my father was an alcoholic, and we dealt with that my whole life. It was one of those things when people have a family member like that, the fears and the doubts and the questions, and never completely knowing what's going to happen, how this is going to end up. And so that's really when I wrote the song was probably kind of the hardest part of my life, dealing with him and not knowing, what he was going to do, where he was going to end up, what was going to happen. He'd gotten pretty bad. We there was a point where he had gone into rehab, and there's a line in the song where I said something like, I forget the exact wording, but it says something like, what I thought was a miracle just turned into the same old thing that it was. And so that rehab thing didn't really last very long. I mean, it was just a short season where you think, man, I thought this would never happen, that he would go and get help like this. The things that he was saying and doing, it was like, wow, this is a miracle. He's gotten through this, and God has just changed him. And unfortunately it didn't last very long. It was a short season. And so he went back to drinking again. And so it was a tough season, one of those where we don't know if he's going to end up on the streets, if we're ever going to see him again. Thankfully, the good news is he did stay with us, and things got better the older he got. He never completely stopped, but it became a lot more manageable and livable. I'm thankful for that. So there is good news. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But it was a tough season.
But there's a lot of broken family. I mean, like I feel the same way. My father was an alcoholic, went to ACOA meetings, like trying to learn how to deal with this song and dance that we grew up having to do, with so much of that. You're referencing the song and dance in a way, or at least you're referencing all the characters within it, the pronouns in the song. You're singing clearly to her. I'm assuming your mother,
Yeah.
but you're also saying you. Is that addressing your father?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then also yourselves, like placing yourself in dialogue with the members of your family. Was that a therapeutic exercise within that song in a way? I don't mean like you're going to therapy and that was assigned to you, but
No, it's definitely, I mean, as a songwriter, even though I mentioned to you, we've talked to earlier in this conversation that I don't often write for myself, it was definitely a therapeutic thing to be able to kind of get this out. It was kind of writing the song was kind of like me being able to just shout, and scream and all those things and ask questions. And what's interesting is we never really we never talked about the song. My dad was a great encouragement to what I do. He was a musician, and I kind of he was always rooting me on because I was doing what he wanted to do and wasn't able to. See, he was always encouraging me, listen to my music, asking how the shows went, all those things. And so we never talked about the song. I never sat down with him and said, "Hey, I wrote this for you," or anything like that. I was just hoping that he would hear it and, maybe take it to heart a little bit. And I think he did. I don't know for sure, but I do feel like he heard what I was saying through it. And, it's just one of those things you don't talk about. You just hope for the best. And, it ended up being, like, as I said, towards the end of his life, things were so much better. And even though I loved him so much and he loved me, but we weren't really super close. Just, I was gone so much. It's so interesting. He used to always sing to me, "Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon," because when I was a kid, he was always gone to work. He was gone a lot. And then, I mean, that the story, if anybody knows that song, it's like it flips. And so I was the one that was gone once he got to a certain age. But he was always encouraging about my music and what I was doing.
That's great. That's great. Can you take some of the imagery here is vivid, and I mean, even just, I guess I'm just more and more surprised the more we talk because of just how rare this is in the Third Day catalog. I want to get into the imagery here in just a second, but let me ask you something about the band first. When you bring a song like this to the band, were they all doing like a, I'm picturing like some record needle going like where, like scratching, where they're wondering like, wait, what is it? Like this is a whole different kind of song, and what are we working with here? Do you remember the first time you brought it to the rest of the guys?
Yeah, I don't remember how they responded initially. I do remember a couple of the guys at least really, understanding what I was going through with the song and kind of, I don't think just allowing us to record it, but and put it on the record, but I think them knowing how important it was for me and possibly to other people as well. So yeah, they were. It wasn't really a struggle to that I remember of going, "Hey, are we going to do this?" It was a definite, yeah, we're going to do this. So that's the great thing about albums is you've got room for those different emotions. You've got room for having different kinds of songs lyrically, musically, and what you're wanting to accomplish through the record. It's like as I think about the Edge when he says in one of those YouTube documentaries, "It's a musical journey, really," and they all laugh at him, but it really is an album is a musical journey sometimes. Yeah, so they were always, as far as I remember, it'd be interesting if you could talk to them about it and if they even remember the song. Um, but yeah, it was important to me, and so therefore it was important to them.
The imagery here, especially in like the bridge, I guess you'd say, there's this great stanza where I was so struck by the analogies, the pictures that you're able to draw up. You say, "You left her without leaving, you hit her without swinging, you took away without giving a thing, except for pain and sorrow. I'm praying that tomorrow that you'll open up your eyes and see." Just some of the first part of that is just some very vivid pictures and whatever. Was that hard to write as you write it? Like, how much do you kind of wrestle with how to put those things into words? Like, songcraft has to kick in. I guess I just wonder, like, how songcraft felt for you through a song like that.
I don't think that it was hard to put into words. It was what I wanted to say. I think really the hard part is just being careful of not just straight up calling somebody out, hoping that, he would hear this and even that my mom would hear it too and understand what I was trying to do and what I was trying to say without, throwing him under the bus or whatever. It's basically me trying to have a conversation with them without having to say it, without having to really sit down and be real about this subject. So in that regard, it wasn't hard to write at all. It's what I needed to do. It's really just trying to be careful to not just have a big sign that says, "Hey, this is what this song is about," and hoping that people can figure it out on their own. And I've often felt that way about songs when I've heard people do interviews and talk about their song. I love that. I mean, you and I were talking about another podcast that I listen to quite often where I love people kind of going into it, but sometimes it takes away from the song because songs can sometimes mean different things to different people. And so, that's another reason I don't really talk about those songs a lot, because it could be a whole different set of emotions and thoughts and ideas for someone else, and you don't want to take that away from them.
You said you weren't ever sure if your dad heard this and had some response to it. Did your mom?
No. Once again, it's just one of those things you don't talk about. I think, I've written quite a few songs for my parents in the past. And, I never really, sometimes it's very clear and sometimes it's not. And so, I just hoped that they would hear it and kind of get it, and we could move on from there.
Sure. Wire is later in the catalog. You guys had put out several albums by the time Wire came around. Does this feel like the kind of song that you couldn't have put out before then? Like, did it need a veteran band and a veteran songwriter to put it out?
I definitely think so, because as we've said already, it was such a rare thing for me to write a song like this. I think some of that was, yes, to your question, it needed to come from a band that had been around for a while and wasn't just looking for radio singles. And yeah, and also for me as a writer, I think it took a time for me to develop as a writer, to be able to get to a place where I could say these kind of things, where I could put my heart on my sleeve, if you will, in a song like this.
Take me to the response. You guys have played this out, or as people heard Wire and that came out, and like, what has been the response over time to this song? Like, have you had some moments for it?
Yeah, it's definitely a deep cut. And so it's kind of one of those, it's not talked about a lot, but I think, I've definitely talked with the guys in the band about it. I talked with, fans about it who had gone through similar situations. And even though, as I said, it's not this big billboard where I say, this is what the song's about, I think a lot of people understood, especially when you go through something like that. And so, yeah, I really hope that it's something that helped. It helped me. It was therapy for me to be able to get those emotions out. And hopefully it was some counseling and comfort for some other people who've gone through similar situations.
You've been listening to The Deepest Cut, part of the Rabbit Room Podcast Network. Audio production and theme music by Isaac Vining. Logo and identity work by Meg Cook. The Deepest Cut was created and hosted by me, Matt Connor. Thank you so much for listening.